Imagine a seed that surpasses beef in protein content, thriving in temperatures that parch cornfields and flourishing with minimal water. For 5 millennia, this unassuming seed powered civilizations across the Earth's hottest deserts. Yet, in less than a century, we abandoned it. We supplanted it with less resilient crops, erased its designation, and allowed it to vanish from our agricultural landscape. However, beneath the surface, something persisted. It didn't perish, it lay dormant. This narrative recounts the fate of a crop we discarded, just when its necessity became paramount. Welcome to Nature Lost Vault. Before we delve into this historical archive, if these accounts resonate with you, the simplest way to preserve this legacy is to subscribe, enable notifications, and share these insights with those who need reminding of what we once knew. Our journey begins in Mexico's Tehuacan Valley, an archaeological site dating back to 500 BCE. Within ancient storage pits, researchers unearthed seeds impeccably preserved for 2,500 years. Yet, its history extends further. Genetic analysis in 2021 revealed this seed was domesticated 5,000 years ago, originating from a singular, brilliant event in the Sonoran Desert. The people who nurtured it, despite lacking written language, possessed a sagacity we have since lost. In a land where survival hinged on planting priorities, they chose this legume over grains, not out of sentiment, but necessity. This is the tepary bean, scientifically known as Phaseolus acutifolius. Evolution engineered it for one purpose: to endure where nothing else could. Its genetic makeup is a formidable stronghold. It produces unique amino sugars that shield its proteins from degradation, even when ambient temperatures reach 118 degrees Fahrenheit. When rainfall dwindles, its leaves fold during the day to conserve moisture, unfurling only at night. It performs nitrogen fixation from the atmosphere, revitalizing barren soil. Moreover, it yields more protein per ounce than beef, up to 25 grams per 100 grams of bean. The Tohono O'odham people named it Tapawi, simply meaning, "it is a bean." Their oral tradition, however, narrates a more profound tale, suggesting the Milky Way isn't formed by stars, but by white tepary beans scattered across the nocturnal sky, a testament to its former abundance. A millennium ago, the Hohokam people cultivated it throughout Arizona, using a method that defies contemporary agricultural logic. They planted it in osos, dry stream beds that briefly swelled during monsoon rains. They constructed brush diversion structures to capture flash floods. The beans germinated with a single rainfall and matured in a mere 60 days, 2 monsoon rains, 1 full harvest. Even in regions receiving only 3 inches of rainfall annually, the tepary bean yielded crops. By the 1920s, Tohono O'odham farmers produced 1.5 million pounds of tepary beans annually. They traded them across the Southwest, establishing a network connecting Arizona, Sonora, and the Great Plains. This bean sustained entire communities through droughts, famines, and unbearable heat, maintaining their well-being. Before the advent of processed foods, the Tohono O'odham experienced virtually no incidence of type 2 diabetes. Their traditional diet of tepary beans, mesquite pods, and choya buds naturally regulated cholesterol and balanced blood sugar. The tepary bean was pivotal. Its soluble fiber slowed digestion, and its low glycemic index made it ideal for metabolic health. Modern research later affirmed another extraordinary quality. Tepary beans contain protease inhibitors that impede the proliferation of certain cancer cells. This was more than just sustenance. It was preventative medicine, growing effortlessly in the arid landscape. So, how did such a potent crop disappear? Its demise was not natural, but ideological. The initial blow landed in the 1600s. Spanish Franciscan friars established numerous missions along the Rio Grande with a triple objective: proselytize the indigenous populations, subjugate the land, and extract resources. These missions introduced wheat, barley, and European livestock. Native farmers were compelled to cultivate wheat for church tithes. Tepary beans, wild, uncontrollable, and requiring no European intervention, had no place in this system. A Jesuit journal from 1694 described the crop as too wild to control. This statement is telling. A plant that grew without irrigation, without ownership, without dependency, posed a threat to the colonial order. Fields cultivating tepary beans were replaced or incinerated. The irony is tragic. These European crops failed during prolonged droughts, while the tepary could have ensured their survival. But the bean, much like the mesquite tree, does not yield easily. Seeds remained buried in the soil, dormant for centuries, awaiting their resurgence. By the 1930s, a new phase of eradication commenced. This time, the weapon was not fire or religion, but mechanization. The 1920s had been a prosperous era for cultivation, but World War II transformed the agricultural landscape. Farmers departed to work for wages on large-scale cotton farms, sustained by well irrigation. These new farms operated on machinery, mechanical harvesters, tractors, and industrial monoculture. Tepary beans were labor-intensive. Their pods ripened at different times and necessitated manual harvesting. A delay meant the pods would shatter, scattering the beans onto the ground. A wild survival mechanism, but a logistical nightmare for machinery. In a system valuing speed and uniformity, the tepary had no role. Government subsidies favored corn, soy, and cotton, crops that fed livestock, not people. By the 1950s, the tepary bean was nearly extinct. A crop that had supported 5,000 years of civilization vanished within 2 decades. Yet, a handful of families refused to forget. Ramona Button of Ramona Farms discovered a few black tepary beans preserved in an old trunk. Seeds that should have been lost were treasured like heirlooms, stored in clay jars, hidden in basements, passed down with whispered instructions. The bean awaited the world's renewed need. That moment arrived in the 1970s as severe global droughts took hold. Soybean yields plummeted. Corn struggled to pollinate under relentless heat. Even wheat, the colonial crop that had displaced the tepary, showed vulnerability under the 110-degree Fahrenheit sun. Farmers in the American Southwest were desperate. Agricultural researchers began experimenting with wild plants still flourishing in desert soil. What they uncovered astonished everyone. A vine with small white blossoms thriving at 115 degrees Fahrenheit. They cultivated it in plots near Tucson and Sonora. Even with almost no irrigation, it produced a full crop. The plant was the tepary bean, alive and well after 4 centuries of obscurity. Scientists measured nitrogen levels in the soil post-harvest. They were higher than before planting. The plant literally regenerated the soil in which it grew. A USDA researcher, Dr. Howard Scott Gentry, dubbed it a gift from the past to the future. They compared it to soybeans. The tepary provided 20 to 25% protein, naturally resisted pests, and required only 1/3 the water. It wasn't a relic. It was a survivor, engineered for extremes. However, survival alone doesn't guarantee a revival. The tepary possessed everything large-scale agriculture ostensibly desired: high yield, drought resistance, natural soil revitalization. But there was one critical issue. It refused to be claimed. It couldn't be patented. It couldn't be genetically modified. Costly fertilizers weren't needed alongside it. This autonomy rendered it invisible within a system predicated on control. Agricultural journals deemed it unsuitable for commercial production, even as research papers lauded its climatic resilience. Simply put, it wasn't profitable, and profit consistently overshadowed survival. Nevertheless, a few individuals challenged this reality. Around 1996, a community group called Tohono O'odham Community Action, TOCA, began gathering ancient seed lineages from elders and forgotten storage jars. Each variety held a unique name, flavor, and narrative. Some hadn't been cultivated in over 300 years. Farmers like Terrell Dew Johnson and Sterling Johnson worked manually. No machinery, no chemicals, just desert soil and memory. They termed it planting the ancestors. By the early 2000s, they harvested enough to nourish families and sell small quantities to local schools. The beans reappeared in traditional stews, tortillas, and bread. Elders remarked that the flavor tasted like the desert itself. Children who had grown up on store-bought food learned to plant, soak, and cook the same beans their great-grandparents had relied on during dry seasons. Every seed represented tenacity. TOCA eventually established a food cooperative and partnered with universities to share data, demonstrating that the tepary could grow with 75% less water than modern beans. Yet this revitalization extended beyond sustenance. It restored identity. Farmers expressed that cultivating it felt like remembering who we were before the drought. As the crops began to spread again across the Southwest, scientists took notice. Today, climate models predict that over 30% of global crop yields could decline by 2050 due to escalating heat. However, the tepary bean has already endured worse conditions. Born from heat in fields where corn and soy succumb, the tepary remains verdant, setting pods even at 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Scientists now refer to it as America's survival crop. In 2019, university trials in Arizona and Mexico corroborated what desert farmers had always known. Tepary beans consumed less than 1/3 the water of soybeans, while yielding nearly equal protein. This implies they could sustain families where rainfall barely touches the soil. The International Center for Tropical Agriculture in Colombia is currently crossbreeding tepary and common beans to impart drought and heat resistance into global food systems. This research validates the knowledge of farmers. Governments have initiated testing for food security programs. However, the true momentum originates from indigenous farmers. They consider it more than a mere crop. It serves as a vital connection, linking history to the unpredictable destiny of our world. As an elder once conveyed to investigators, we cultivate it because it retains the blueprint for existence when all else falters. The narrative of the transient bean isn't one of belated discovery. It's one of belated acknowledgement. Its wisdom was never absent, merely overlooked. And so, while the globe allocates immense sums to find drought-resistant seeds, the solution has been present in the arid regions for 5 millennia. This legume, which thrived amidst scarcity, sustained throngs through intense heat, endured various adversities, industrialization, and corporate neglect, consistently tendered its bounty. It simply awaited our recollection. This insight hasn't vanished. It resides within every seed, every husk, every yield. The plant we once deemed primitive might hold the key to our future endurance. All it requests is that we look beyond financial gain and perceive what has perpetually been there: resilience, flourishing in the desert. If this revelation stimulated your thoughts, subscribe to Nature Lost Vault and activate notifications. Each like and share contributes to safeguarding this ancient wisdom. The subsequent revelation is forthcoming.